Good morning, I'm Saini at the University of Canberra, and I'm in my weekly conversation with Michelle Grattan. Good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Deep.
Interesting week in politics as we just finished. Last Thursday, we had a bombshell decision by the Fair Works Commission to cut back the Sunday penalty rates for casual workers and so on in certain sectors. How is that going to play out politically?
Certainly Bill Shorten's taken up this issue very strongly and said that Labor will fight the decision if it can't get any change. It will, when in government, legislate to essentially clip the wings of the Fair Work Commission. Now, the Commission is an independent body, it's the industrial umpire, and so the government can say, well, not us, it was the umpire. Of course, this decision appeals to the base of the Conservative parties, but I think it presents a real problem for Malcolm Turnbull because people will lose money.
Yeah, and that problem did plague John Howard as well. There are those who would say he lost an election over this issue.
The wider industrial relations
issue
certainly
very much part of that.
That's right. The difference, of course, is that John Howard brought in legislation, very tough legislation. In this case, it is the independent umpire.
Now, while this debate is going on, Bill Shorten himself gets into some small amount of trouble with this young fellow that he had in front of the cameras, and his own credibility is being questioned because he actually is not affected by this.
Well, that's right. Politicians always have props, and in these sorts of situations they have human props, but best to really check out that your prop fits your argument, and in this case the guy was on an enterprise agreement and therefore would not be affected.
I suspect, though, that it's going to blow over and it'll come back to the original issue, which is much more sustained issue.
This issue will go on for a very long time. It's a very difficult issue, I think, for the government.
Yeah. Now, speaking about credibility, we have a couple of other things that are simmering. One, over the acceptance of Australian refugees by United States.
The famous deal.
That's right. The people had suspected for a long time that there was probably some horse trading involved because we were going to take Costa Rican refugees from the United States. Government has consistently struggled and striven to separate these two things. But now suddenly the Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton, seemed to have actually, perhaps inadvertently, admitted that there was actually a deal.
Yes, he said this week that the people from Costa Rica wouldn't be coming until the people from Nauru and Manus started to leave. And while he denied that there was a people's swap, he said, well, if people want to characterise it that way, fair enough, essentially. And this did blow open the fact that the government has been misleading over this from the start. Everyone really knew that the Americans were helping us, we were helping the Americans on this refugee question, and the denials of the government never seemed convincing. But now they're exposed as essentially lies, and that's not good for the government's credibility.
No, I have to think that this was actually just a slip of tongue by the minister.
Well, one commentator said it was a sort of glaring example of honesty coming to the fore. Inadvertently.
That's right. Now that probably is going to have some influence on the way United States thinks about this deal, because it actually does affect their credibility as well. How do you think they're going to react?
I guess with President Trump, one never knows, and maybe he's got so many other issues he won't notice. But nevertheless, I think that the government really will be crossing its fingers till people start to move, because the assessments are going on, but so far no one's got on an aeroplane.
Mm-hmm. The government continues to have difficulty with making its message stick in the public mind and establishing credibility with the public. Energy issue keeps bubbling up. It keeps coming back again and again. Now we have the Essential poll, which indicates a massive disappointment, disapproval of the government policies on energy. You have any comment on that?
Well, the government seems to believe that it can just bash Labor over renewable energy and that people will take this message, accept it, and think that renewables are bad and they're creating energy insecurity and the blackouts and so on. But what the Essential poll found was that on a number of questions, people were really pro-renewables and not impressed by the government's own performance on energy. Now, this is a very difficult area. There's no doubt that as we make a transition to renewables, there are problems in the system. The market's not working well. Things have to be fixed up. A policy for the long term has to be reached. But nevertheless, the government has made this too political and not enough in terms of policy substance, and seeking more consensus rather than conflict in this very central policy area.
Speaking of the conflict, as if we didn't have enough, now Tony Abbott wades in and with his speech last night at the book launch, and he makes some strong comments on energy policy and on immigration policy and so on, how that is going to add further complications into this issue.
Well, it just again highlights the divisions in Malcolm Turnbull's ranks, and Tony Abbott's speech, which really brought together a number of propositions he's been running in recent times, saying there should be a referendum to cut back Senate powers, that RET should be cut or abandoned. Now he's saying that immigration should be reduced. It's a major across-the-board critique of where the government is at, and what he's saying is that people are turning away from the government and that if it doesn't get its act together, it'll drift towards defeat. Now, I think this will be badly received by a number of his colleagues. I think that he really has lost a lot of support by running this negative commentary on the government over some months now, but nevertheless, in the public mind, the message is the Liberals are divided, and that is bad for Malcolm Turnbull.
You know, it would be nice at some point to get over all of these things so that the country can just simply focus on good governance and we can move forward.
Well, that's an aspiration, but I doubt that we're going to see that anytime soon, unfortunately.
Next week would be interesting to watch. The Parliament is back, and we'll have another interesting conversation next Friday.
And some fireworks during the week, I'm sure.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Deep.